This is Bloomfield Central School District Superintendent Andy Doell. I want to take a few moments to provide our parents and community with a few thoughts regarding our school reopening plan, which has been posted on our website. As you know, COVID-19 created unimaginable obstacles for school districts and communities for the past year and a half. Last spring, we began to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and as the summer began, things looked promising for the potential of a normal school year. As a result of the new Delta variant, COVID cases are once again on the rise. This news prompted the CDC to issue guidance regarding the safe reopening of schools. Unlike last year, however, the governor and the New York State Health Department have chosen not to provide detailed requirements for school districts to plan their reopenings with. Instead, each of these entities have referred school districts to the guidance provided by the CDC and have recommended schools utilize that guidance. Recently, the New York State Education Department released guidance for schools in an attempt to create some consistency in the approach schools may take in the development of their reopening plans. I want to acknowledge that the lack of specific requirements elicits mixed reaction from me. On one hand, I'm happy to be able to have the ability to make decisions on a local level that fit our community and the needs of our students. On the other hand, I find the weight of making decisions about health and safety a heavy load to bear, given that I'm an educator and not a medical professional. As we created the Bloomfield Blueprint for reopening schools this year, we worked with other Ontario County school districts, our school physician, and we worked collaboratively with the county. These partnerships and the working relationship the district has with these groups has been greatly valued and appreciated. As Bloomfield created our plan, I considered two very important pieces of information. First, we know how we operated last year proved to be safe and effective in controlling the spread of COVID-19. While we had students, faculty, and staff that tested positive for COVID-19 last year, we had no indications that a spread occurred as a result of contact with individuals within the school setting. Safety measures used last year allowed the district to remain open and afforded our students, UPK through grade 8, an opportunity to benefit from in-person learning the entire year. Knowing that the approach we took last year kept our students, faculty, and staff safe would lead me, under normal circumstances, to take the same approach to reopening this year. However, a second piece of information is also important to consider. A second major consideration for me was the safety measures that we put in place last year. 6 feet of social distancing, limiting interactions between students, modifying our approach to some extracurricular activities, made in-person learning for our students in grades 9 through 12 difficult, and created a negative impact on our high school students and the experience they had. This cannot happen again. I was happy to see that both the CDC and the New York State Education Department recognized the importance of bringing all students back for in-person learning. And while some of the guidance they recommend may be prohibitive of that end, they acknowledged in-person learning should be the #1 priority of every district. That sentiment is shared wholeheartedly here in Bloomfield. As we approached this year's reopening, our goal was to find a balance that would afford everyone a safe environment to be in, while also allowing us to open school in a way that was as normal as possible. You will find that our reopening plan highlights guidance from the New York State Education Department and also reflects the district's approach to managing that guidance so that parents can have a clear understanding of how we tried to find that important balance. I want to take a moment to highlight a few major considerations in our plan. First, masking. No other topic seems to create more controversy than that of masking. As we looked at the topic of masking, we felt a common sense approach to this topic was the best approach. While some entities call for universal masking, we felt utilizing the transmission zone designations to determine protocols on masking made sense. This year, we are strongly recommending masks when we are in a low or moderate transmission zone designation, and we will be requiring masks when we are in a substantial or high-risk zone designation. When in a substantial or high-risk zone designation, students will be afforded mask breaks in a manner that would minimize any potential need to have a student quarantine in the event of a potential exposure. We believe this approach allows individuals to exercise some choice when appropriate and when in transmission zone designations that have the potential to put in-person learning in jeopardy, allows us an opportunity to better ensure students can stay in person. We will be utilizing the zone designation that we are in each Friday to determine the masking policy that we will use for the week ahead. This will allow us to communicate protocols to faculty, staff, students, and parents in advance so that everyone is on the same page. We believe to try to manage daily changes would be just too difficult and too confusing. Second, physical distancing. As you recall, last year, physical distancing was a major obstacle in planning for in-person learning. Schools were required to ensure 6 feet of physical distancing in classrooms, on the bus, and while students were eating. This requirement, more than any other, created challenges for our district. To manage transportation, parents were asked to help us bring students back UPK through grade 8 by transporting their student when possible. The number of parents who stepped up and demonstrated a willingness to drive their student or students to school so that other students who did not have their own transportation could ride the bus was overwhelming. This support and cooperation here in Bloomfield allowed us to transport students on buses in a manner in which we could sit one student to a seat unless they had siblings that also rode that bus. To problem solve physical distancing in the classroom and to prevent the mixing of pods at the elementary school, AIS teachers became classroom teachers, and we brought specials to students in their classroom. To problem solve physical distancing in classrooms at the middle school, students were placed in classroom pods and teachers moved from class to class rather than students moving from room to room. Meeting the physical distancing requirements at the high school proved extremely difficult due to scheduling constraints, but eventually we were able to create a schedule that brought 9th and 10th grade students back 2 days, while 11th and 12th grade students came back to school opposite of our 9th and 10th grade students. To problem solve distancing requirements in the cafeteria, students in the elementary school and middle school ate in classrooms, while high school students ate in the small gym spaced accordingly. The recommendation from the CDC this year is to have students spaced at a physical distance of 3 feet whenever practical. Our plan utilizes the recommendation of 3 feet of physical distancing, and classrooms UPK through 12 have been set up to accommodate that recommendation whenever possible. We are planning to run bus transportation as normal this year, but we will be requiring students and drivers to wear masks at all times on the bus, regardless of the transmission zone designation we're in. We are also planning on having students eat together in the cafeteria once again this year. On both the bus and in the cafeteria, students will be assigned seats. This approach effectively creates a pod of students so that in the event of an exposure at school, we can better work with the county to contact trace the exposure. Our plan affords students the opportunities to work collaboratively in groups when in a low to moderate transmission zone designation. When in a substantial or high transmission zone designation, students will be physically distanced at 3 feet to a greater extent. With this approach, and with using 3 feet of physical distancing as the standard when possible, we will be able to return all students for in-person learning in a manner that resembles a much more normal school experience. It's important to note, while we have a plan in place and while we have an approach we find meets the balance needed, our approach may need to be adjusted at some point. Should the governor or the state health department mandate schools to take certain steps, we must follow those mandates. Should we receive communication from our local health department regarding a dramatic rise in community transmission or school transmission here in Bloomfield, we also may need to adjust. If we need to adjust our approach at some point, we will communicate the rationale for that adjustment to you, and we will look to readjust back to our original plan as soon as possible. In the coming days, we will be sharing additional video messages with parents regarding what students can expect on the bus this year, what classrooms will look like, what cleaning will entail this year, and we will highlight important information from our school nurses. Please also be aware your student's building principal will be communicating details with you about what the opening of school will entail for their building. Remember, you can access our full plan on our website, bloomfieldcsd.org. We have released a very brief survey designed to assess your comfort level with the current plan and allow you an opportunity to send us your comments and questions to consider. We'll be reviewing the results of that survey, and we'll be looking to address your questions through additional communications. As of today, Friday, August 20th, Ontario County has been designated a high-risk transmission zone. This means that the masking protocol within our plan for high transmission zone designation will be in effect next week as our student athletes begin practices. I would like to close by thanking you for your continued support of our school district. Your support and encouragement continues to demonstrate what a special place Bloomfield is. Thank you for taking the time to view this message, and as always, if you need anything, please let us know.